and welcome back to Sea Red UK, where quite simply it's Chicago Bulls sim. This podcast is part of the Fans First Sports Network, so wherever you're listening, rate, review, subscribe, helps us out and ensures you don't miss another episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the bell, give us a thumbs up, and leave some comments down below. I'm Matt, and as usual, joined by Neill. How are we doing, Neill?
I've been better. I've certainly been better prepared. This podcast almost didn't happen, but I just decided I'd wing it, run to work a little bit early, and just get it done from here. So hence why I don't have my usual background.
Yeah, obviously we did say on Tuesday that we'd be doing an episode today, and then today's just gone to chaos.
Yeah.
But as we say, work out where it is. Embrace the chaos.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I guess we'll get on with it because I know we're both a little bit short on time.
Yeah.
The latest news, and we're going to start not technically with the Bulls. We said on the last episode before we threw it to the conversation with Hayes that we wanted the Dame trade to just be done.
Yeah.
I did sort of throw in there that Bucks had become I'd seen somewhere that Bucks were a possibility. Didn't really think much of it. And as it was last night, Dame ends up a Buck.
Yeah.
Initial thoughts were, wow.
Yeah.
It was a pretty big trade. And then when I thought about it, it doesn't bother me that much. I'm glad that he's gone somewhere like Milwaukee rather than Toronto or Miami.
Yeah.
Because as other podcasters and that have already said, we're not competing with Bucks. We weren't competing with Bucks last year. We weren't going to compete with them this year. Teams we were competing with, Toronto, Miami, they look horrible on paper. We've got better. They've got worse, if anything. So to me, there's two places that we've jumped. Add Nets into that. There's another place we've jumped on paper. I'm going to say it. Hashtag continuity.
You have to start like that, don't you? You know, just lower the tone of the whole conversation straight away.
I mean, I'm not going to go into the full details of the trade because I'm sure everybody's already seen it and picked it apart and seen who's gone where and all that. But I know you're personally excited by it because you're going to Orlando in a few weeks and booked tickets to a certain game in Orlando.
Yeah, it's just been pure potluck. I didn't have any inside information or anything, don't worry. Just basically going with the family. My daughter has got quite big into basketball over the last year and she wanted to go to a game. So, of course, I wasn't going to argue with that. Unfortunately, the Bulls aren't in town while we're there. But I kind of listed out the teams that were and said, look, pick a game and we'll go to it. So she picked the Lakers. So I vetoed that because, you know, it's the Lakers. Although I was curious to actually get to see LeBron in person, I just couldn't do it to myself. When I saw the price of the tickets as well, it was just like, yeah, that ain't happening. So the next one she picked was the Bucks. She said she'd like to see Giannis play, and I said I'd like to help some abuse at Grayson Allen, which obviously won't be happening anymore. But we will get to see Dame time. So looking forward to getting to see Dame and Giannis in person.
Yeah. So obviously, I know you've not been behind, but took a little while to catch up. What's your thoughts on the trade now?
Yeah. I was at training last night. Well, I was on my way to training when it broke, and didn't get really much of a chance to look into it. Just the flashes that were coming up on my phone, so it was killing me for about 2 hours because I couldn't actually go and start tracing back on it. And by the time I did, everything had just lit up. It took me absolutely ages to catch up on everything that had gone down. But like yourself, initially it was shocking. I didn't see it coming. I didn't expect it. But yeah, it doesn't really move the needle on anything for the Bulls. Obviously, it does for the East, it does for the Bucks, pretty much does for the NBA. But from a Bulls perspective, we didn't really look at the Bucks as a team that we could beat on the regular anyway. And now we certainly don't look at them as a team we can beat on the regular. They've lost a little bit of talent too. Obviously, you have to give something up to get something back like Dame. So, Jrue Holliday is gone, and Grayson Allen is gone as well. Sorry, that stuck in my throat. So they have lost a little bit of an edge maybe on that side of it. Certainly defensively, but you're adding Dame Lillard to your team, and you're standing him next to Giannis, so they're obviously going to be a force to reckon with. But like you say, that middle of the pack group, particularly Miami, who kind of set themselves up to be in a position to take on Dame, they don't look too good now for a team that got all the way, or almost all the way, should I say, last season, which is something I'm sure you're devastated about, being such a huge Heat fan and Jimmy Butler fan. On that, actually, did you see the sour grapes from Jimmy?
Yeah. Tampering.
Yeah.
Because Miami don't tamper. Kind of Lowry.
Yeah, I think he just feels maybe a bit blindsided and just voiced his opinion too soon without thinking about it, really.
Yeah, because he's now got to play 65 games next year.
Yeah, exactly.
And
it's all going wrong for him.
I think is it 13 years in the league, he's played 65 games or more 5 times.
There you go.
So, yeah, F you, Jimmy. Anyway, on to the next bit before we go down that. As you just mentioned, one of the pieces that moved is Jrue Holliday.
Yes.
And straight away, it comes out that Portland are going to look at trading him. So, Bulls Nation being Bulls Nation, we have to get him. And, there's a bit more come out today that apparently Bulls are one of the 6 teams on his radar, including obviously Miami, it was Sixers, somewhere else. I can't remember. Not really that interested, to be fair. But yeah, obviously the one team on that list was Chicago. And look, I've got nothing against Jrue Holliday. I'd love him to be a Bull, but I just can't see it happening. We haven't got the capabilities to get him, I don't think. We haven't got the assets to give up. Anybody who's saying, "Oh, we'll sort of move Demar for him," why? If you want him to be with Demar and Zach.
Mm-hmm.
So then you go down a lot of people saying move P. Will. Fine, fair enough, but Drew's on 35 mil. P. Will's on what, about 10 mil? I can't remember what his contract is off the top of my head. So then they're saying throw the Lonzo deal in. Right, well that's still 30 mil ish. So you've still got to add more into it. Obviously, give them the pick back that we've got from them. But people seem to forget how trades work, and both teams have got to want it to work. So who's saying that Portland are going to want 20 million that they can't use? You know what I mean? It's just
the trade machines are saying it, Matt. The trade machines.
Some of the trades that are going around, was it we give up Demar, Drummond, and somebody else, and probably Pete Will in that trade as well. And you just think that's fine. We've got Jrue Holliday. We've got 10 guards and no bigs.
That's the thing. I think I texted that to you today. I was like, yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. We give up P. Will, maybe Drummond as well to make it work a little bit, and we take on Jrue Holliday. We don't need to worry about the fact that leaves us with like 1.5 at the 4 and 1 at the 5, and 12 players at the 1 and 2. It's just we don't have a place for him, and unless we were able to shed 2 or 3 guards at least, plus cash considerations or whatever else, picks in the future, it doesn't make sense to bring in another guard, no matter how high the quality level is, unless you're going to shed at that area and not take away from an already thin position.
Yeah, I mean, people say him throw Ayo in there. Ayo can't be moved until December.
Right.
Could be moved until December.
Right.
Vooch can't be moved until December. So we've literally got P. Will and Lonzo, Dalen. Portland don't want them. Possibly
No.
P. Will they'd want, because they might see him as somebody they can actually develop. But no, like I say, I've got nothing against Jrue Holliday, and I would love him in Chicago. Obviously, alongside Caruso, you've got the 1 and 2 from NBA's all-team first defense there, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
From last year. So not many teams are going to score on us, but we don't need to improve defensively anyway.
No.
We're top 5 defense. It's offense where we need to improve. And all right, yeah, he's a solid 3-point shooter, but we've just brought in Javon Carter.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense. It's obviously these reporters that speak to execs and agents and all that sort of stuff throwing it out there. And as I said the other day, they put Bull's name in because it had some clout to it.
Yeah.
And look, media days next week, training camps next week. AK doesn't make moves when he's meant to make moves. He's really going to make a move 4 or 5 days before training camp starts. As I said, #continuity.
There you go again.
Yep. On that note, Demar DeRozan had an interesting piece with, I think his name was Mike Medina of, I can't remember, the Sports Keeda or something like that.
Yeah, Sportskeeda. Never heard of it.
No, I've seen it float around a few times, but I don't pay attention until there's something worth paying attention to. And yeah, I mean, the two things that I really took away from this is Demar's bringing a book out, and I can't wait for that. I need to get that. And he's doing a little TV docuseries, Dinners with Demar. They're the two bits that I most took away from it, because to me, the rest of it is what you expect him to say. Apart from, obviously, people who are asking for the rebuild don't understand basketball. That was maybe a little bit of a dig. But the other bit that I liked was, well, kind of liked, is he wants to be at Bulls for the rest of his career.
Right.
Now, again, I think it's just your typical media sort of answer in it. He's not going to say, trade me. He's basically, Eversley's come out and said that he wants Demar, and Demar said the feelings reciprocated. He wants to stay in Chicago. It's where he feels home, and it's where he wants to end his career. So I guess the question I've got for you is, would you be happy with Demar finishing his career as a Bull?
Yeah, I wouldn't actually have too much of an issue with it, but it would have to be under the provision of him being prepared to take a step back slightly as his career hits more of the twilight seasons. Okay, I'm not saying that he wouldn't be capable of playing the way he plays. Like I've said on many occasions, I think that his game is going to age very gracefully. But the problem is, as we've said also in the past, and other people have also expressed, the way Demar plays and clogs up the paint, it is not necessarily conducive to a developing squad. So if Demar keeps slowing the game down, if Demar keeps clogging up the paint the way he does, and he is absolutely exceptional at it. Let me just add that. But if he does continue to do that for the next 2, 3, 4 years, however long he stays on before he retires, the problem with that is the likes of Kobe and P. Will and Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips and Justin Lewis. Did I get the names right way around? They they aren't going to have, even Io, they aren't going to have the opportunity to develop their games in the same way that they would if DeMar took more of a kind of role like he took in San Antonio, which is more of a a facilitating kind of a role and more of a mentor type of a role, and that's kind of where I'd like to see him take his game if he remains with the Bulls, which, like I said, I've got no issue with. He's an absolutely top quality player.
Yeah, I mean, my sort of worry with it is the more I see of Demar and the more I read about Demar and, you know, when he goes on podcasts and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
the more I fall in love with him as a player. Do you know what I mean? I've gone from not wanting him to be traded, but he's that asset that I would trade, to now thinking, yeah, I'd be happy for him to stay. But everything you've just said there is what worries me. Do you know what I mean? Is him staying going to be detrimental to the development of the Bulls? You know, he needs to, like you said, take that step back a little bit. And we've seen what he's like as a mentor, but he's got to mentor him on the court now. That's
Right.
the thing. And he's got to allow the likes of P. Will and eventually Dalen to be able to progress. And obviously the way he tends to play the game looks like it's stopping him. Not saying it is, but it's obviously going to have an effect. You know what I mean? And that's where it goes back to what I've said about Javon Carter. If he can be the guy that takes the ball out of Demar's hands, as we saw with Pat Bev back end of last season, Demar becomes a better player for it.
Mm-hmm.
Other players become better players for it. Zach, mainly. You know, potentially P. Will. You know, and that's why, to me, I mean, we're going to talk about P. Will next week, but if P. Will goes in that second unit, then Torrey Craig's not the sort of player that needs the ball in his hands. We don't want the ball to go into Torrey Craig's hands like we want the ball to go into P. Will's hands. You know, and so if it does get stuck at Demar or it does go the other way towards Zach or wherever, to me that's not an issue. But yeah, I mean, obviously the other thing was with Demar is money.
Mm.
You know, I mean, what's he on, 28 mil at the minute? How much is he going to be looking for the next, maybe another 3-year deal, something like that?
Yeah. That's a big question, and you know, you would expect he'd be looking for a nice contract. It's probably going to be his final contract, potentially. But I think we've discussed this previously and kind of said that I'd be comfortable with him getting a 2-year contract with a 3rd year possible team option.
Yeah.
But they may have to sweeten that deal with a player option. I don't know. But again, it depends on the value of the contract altogether.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a question that I was going to ask you before, and it's a question I'd like to ask Bulls Nation in general, really. But all these times when we're looking at these trades, or we want Demar to go, we want Zach to go, we want Vooch to go, blah blah blah. If them players had spent the last 3-4 years somewhere else in the league, whether it's Lakers, I don't know, Warriors, Sixers, wherever it happened to be, Spurs, and they were putting up the sort of numbers and the sort of stuff as they do, obviously on paper, would you want, and it come out, Bulls are interested in DeMar DeRozan, would you say, yeah, I'm all up for that? Would you want him on?
Well, all you need to do to get an honest answer from me on that one is to look back how I felt about it when we did sign DeMar. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were certainly lacking talent, and we certainly got talent from DeMar. I mean, look at what he gave us in his first season. It was incredible. I mean, I think it was even his best season in the NBA. And it was at that stage of his career in his first year with the Chicago Bulls. He's an absolute talent. I mean, what is he, number 25 in scoring All NBA?
Is it 39? 38.
Is it 39? Oh, okay, I'm a good bit off, but still, it's incredibly high.
Well, the thing is, it's not that far behind Steph Curry, you know, and
okay,
they were drafted in the same year as well. I know Steph's had his injury concerns, whereas DeMar hasn't, but
you
know, for somebody who doesn't shoot the three.
Yeah, I mean, he puts them up two at a time, but then he gets one to go with it a lot of the time. And
Exactly.
again, that's something else we've spoken about in the past. Okay, Demar. A lot of people want Demar to shoot the three, and he does, and he's actually not a bad 3-point shooter, but he gets most of his points in the paint. But with that little fake that he does, that little pump fake, and the way he can kind of sell it, he tends to get to the stripe an awful lot too, and he shoots well from the line as well. So I mean, he picks up 3 points that way a lot of the time.
Yeah, so I think it's have to say we'd both be happy to see Demar stay, basically.
Yeah, I mean,
in the right
if
way.
the right deal came up to move him, obviously I'd be on for that too. I mean, I'm not totally sold on keeping Demar forever, but at the same time, you're telling me he wants to stay with the Bulls and the Bulls want to keep him. Yeah, I can get on board.
Yeah, and obviously also yesterday, before we get into our predictions for players, there was an interview. AK and Eversley went on, was it 670 the score?
Yeah.
Obviously, the radio over in Chicago. No, it's not something we've been able to listen to. We've seen the little snippets of where other people have, broke it down. And again, it's the typical answers you expect from AK, really. Eversley maybe opens up a little bit more. And for me, the one interesting bit was when Eversley said, in their exit interviews, the players said they didn't feel like a team. And that was obviously back end of last year or end of last season. And to me, that's a worry when they're preaching this run it back, continuity, all that sort of stuff. Obviously, yeah, they've added Javon Carter and Torrey Craig into that. But it's obviously that doesn't mean they don't like each other as people, as players, or whatever.
Yeah.
But to me, it's a worry. Why, if that's what the players are saying, what is it that's making them feel like that?
Right.
It's just, yeah. That was the main comment that stood out to me. I don't know what you make of that one.
Yeah, no, I actually listened to the first maybe 10 minutes of the interview, but I didn't get to finish it. And I've obviously seen the breakdowns. And that's something that struck me straight away as well, because it's not sold that way on social media anyway. Do you know, it's kind of always been pushed that they're doing things together and they're spending time together and they come to Chicago early and they all go off with Demar and do this training during the summer. And then for Mark Eversley to throw a bit of a bomb out there along the lines of, actually, we didn't think that they sounded and felt like a team, it's a bit of a concern, really. Because how you're expected to play like a team if you don't feel like you're in it together is beyond me. You know, that's what makes up a team. So I'm glad to see it's something that they're trying to address if it is an issue. And let's hope that this little trip down to Nashville is as much of an answer as they seem to think it is.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, to me, there was nothing else that really stood out. The typical, right, training camp's an opportunity for Javon Carter, Kobe White, and Ayo Dosunmu to compete for the starting point guard role. We know that. Tell us.
Surely every role is like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, the interview soon got swept away because of the bit Dame trade. So, it kind of, I don't know whether a lot of Bulls fans have kind of missed it because all of a sudden it was social media was overtook with that or what. But I mean, was there anything else from it that stood out to you?
Just that they mentioned again, and they doubled down on the shot profile.
Yeah,
and that they really want to work on making sure that they don't create this deficit for themselves going into games, because if they're not putting up enough shots, particularly from the three, immediately just doing the math of it all, they are behind. They're in a deficit against pretty much every team they play against. So that's something that they want to see change, which, theoretically, by bringing in Javon Carter and Torrey Craig, they are addressing that, and they are trying to address that. So we'll see how that pans out too.
Yeah, I mean, there was the fact that they said that we're nearly there.
Mm-hmm.
I think AK said there was like 19 games where it was a buzzer beater, or we'd thrown away a double-digit lead, or whatever it was, and it's like, that's a lot of games, though.
It is a lot of games.
Nearly a quarter of the amount of regular season games that we play. And yeah, hopefully they've done enough to address that, but I guess we'll find out in the next couple of weeks in pre-season.
It's getting close.
And obviously our first pre-season game is against the Bucks, and possibly Giannis and Dame. We'll get a bit
of... there's been no actual official start date for Dame, has there?
No, I mean, they're already selling his jerseys. I've seen that.
Of course they are.
But, we're...
Do you want me to pick you one up, Matt?
I'm good.
You sure?
Yep. Although, have you heard the nickname, what they're giving to, obviously, what's going on in Milwaukee now?
No.
Obviously, you've got the Greek Freak and Dame Time. So, there's going to be a bit of... It don't quite work to me, but freak time. I'd rather call it freaky time, but...
Well, that's a whole other story, isn't it? Whatever you get up to in your own personal time is up to you.
So, on that one, I'll send it to the ad read. Obviously, as you know, Neill's fell over. We're partnered with USA Sports. USA Sports is a UK and European-based sports merchandise retailer. They cover the NBA, NHL, NFL, MLB, as well as Formula One. From hats to hoodies, there's something for fans from everywhere. Chicago Bulls to Team Red Bull and everywhere in between. So check them out on all the socials and at usasports.co.uk. And for 15% off, enter the code CREDUK at checkout. So, we are trying to get through these predictions, and we're first two, we're going to pretty much skip over because I don't think there's a lot to say about either of them. The first one, Adama Sanogo. Now, as we've said with all these sort of players, hard to predict when you haven't seen them play, or the only bit you have seen Summer League. Didn't like the look of Sanogo, then I did like the look of him.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe he's not NBA ready, needs a bit of work, but potentially offers something the Bulls could need if he gets plugged in.
Yeah.
Because he was very dangerous around the rim, I thought, defensively and offensively in Summer League. Obviously, he's got to hone that down with Windy City on the two-way. Personally, don't see him getting a lot, if any, minutes with Bulls. The main roster. As we say with all of them, bit of garbage time. So I think, for me, with Sanogo, I'm just going to go ungradable, just because we don't see enough of him.
Yeah, I'm the same as yourself. I mean, I when we watched him playing in the Summer League, the first game, I made the same joke at the time that Big Dave made when he was on our pod, which was, it's a no-go. He just needs to sit down. He's not got a place. But then it proved me wrong. He bounced back in the next game, and he actually proved himself to be quite strong and quite dangerous in the paint, particularly getting rebounds. He's well able to kind of throw his size around a little bit and get himself into a good position. But outside of that, I've yet to see too much more that I like. But however, that is something that we need. So I'm going to give him ungraded as well. We just don't know and haven't seen enough of him. But I don't. In regards to how much time he's going to get, I don't really know what he'll see on the floor. I think it might take an injury, touch wood we don't see one, to bring him in for anything other than mop-up minutes.
Yeah, and obviously, as we know, we've got plenty of depth in that position anyway.
We do, yeah.
So, yeah, next player, Terry Taylor, the last one to sign as a Bull on this current roster. As we said at the time, or I said anyway, I like him. I liked him down at Windy City. I like the little bit of minutes that he got with the regular Bulls. Undersized slightly for his position, but he rebounds like a lot bigger than he is. He seems to have a very high sort of IQ for his position as well. Quite good movement and stuff like that. And he dominated down with Windy City in the games he was playing. I know it's the G League, but he can. I think he's got something there, and he's got that little bit of NBA experience as well from his time with Pacers. But he's end of bench for a reason, and on a very team-friendly deal for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
I personally don't see him finishing the season with the Bulls.
Ooh, hot take.
Yeah, the fact that he was initially offered the two-way, and then all of a sudden we've converted it. It seems like a bit of a panic signing, shall we say, when there was possibly other options out there that would have cost Jerry a little bit too much, shall we say. And I just think, like, between him and Karlik, they don't offer enough, but they offer a way of getting somebody else in, possibly.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the exceptions we've got, or whatever it is. So I'm going to grade him if he does stay for the season, but I don't think he does. So I'm just going to give him a D. I think if we see him, he'll excite the fans enough where it's like, why are we playing him more?
Yeah.
But I just don't think we're going to see him. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I find it very hard to put grades on these players that we really don't know because we haven't seen enough minutes. So I have Terry down as ungraded as well. For very similar reasons to we've discussed with Sanogo. I think he does have the ability to provide us with something that we need. He does have the ability to gain minutes potentially on the floor, but I just don't think Billy gives him those minutes. So there we go.
I mean, quick flex, when he did actually sign, he liked our tweet of it.
There you go.
So,
he's our guy.
I was going to say, forever my guy now. Wherever he ends up.
Yeah.
And the last player for today, obviously we are trying to get it done. We'll spend a bit more time on this one. And it's, if anyone's seen the thumbnail and the stuff like that, it's who it's about. And it is Nikola Vucevic. Now, I've been quite critical of Vooch in the past.
Right, here we go. Humble pie.
Yeah, but I'm not afraid to admit I was wrong.
Right.
I did say at various times last year he still frustrates me. But I think the frustration is aimed at the way Bulls play him rather than at Vooch himself. And that's kind of what I've learned over time. I think initially I did what really annoys me with people. I was following the narrative. I was listening to people on social media that were slating him and just basically going along with it rather than forming my own opinion on him. But when you asked that question the other week or the other month, whenever it was, who do I see as the most important person on the roster or the most important player on the roster? Not the best player, the most important.
Right.
And my answer, because you kind of threw it at me, was Javon Carter. And then so obviously sat back and thought about it, and I think it was probably the next day when I messaged you and said, it's not, it's Vooch.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that I say that is because we can't replace him. What he brings to this team, we can't replace. Not with the roster. If Zach goes down for a few games, yeah, it hurts the team, but you can put Kobe or somebody in there like that. If Demar goes down, again, it hurts the team, but P. Will can slip to that position, Caruso can go there, whatever, so they can be replaced. If Vooch goes down, okay, Drummond steps up, which doesn't bother me in the slightest, but Drummond doesn't offer what Vooch offers. 82 games, 50 something double doubles, consistency, reliability, stuff like that. As we know with Drummond, it's all about embrace the chaos. There isn't any chaos with Vooch.
No.
Might come across as a little bit boring, but he's just Mr. Reliable, isn't he? It's just. And obviously, we've seen FIBA World Cup what he can do when he's played in a different way.
Right.
He dominated against Team USA. He was getting double doubles. He was basically Montenegro's main man. And I think they maybe overpaid slightly for him. I think that, again, was a panic re-signing of, we're going to give you this money because we don't want anybody else to give you it. But was there anybody else offering him any money?
Don't
know. But as we said at the time, we had to re-sign him because there's nobody else out there in the league that we could have got that does what Vooch offers.
No.
And like I said, I don't believe he's the best player on the team, but he is the most important. And I think a lot of Bulls Nation now are coming back around to that because the hate seems to have dropped a little bit, but I think he's still always going to be the scapegoat for when Bulls don't play well. But how many times did I say to you last year, if Vooch is playing well, Bulls are playing well. If Vooch is playing bad, Bulls are going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not necessarily a case of Vooch playing bad, it's Vooch not being involved.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I'll let you have your say on Mr. Vucevic.
Yeah, well, I think as you know, and anyone that does decide to join us in the live threads during the games know, I'm all about good Vooch, bad Vooch, right? When we see good Vooch, like you say, it affects the game in a positive way for the Bulls. Doesn't necessarily guarantee a win, but it certainly guarantees a more competitive effort. We see bad Vooch, and by bad Vooch, I mean missing bunnies, not getting touches, hovering around the 3-point line. When we see that Vooch, it doesn't tend to bode well for not just the result of the game, but it doesn't bode well for how the Bulls look. I think any game that we started over the last 2-3 years with Vooch, where the ball starts off being fed into him, it tends to go a lot better, and it starts the game on the right foot. What's great about Vooch is he has a high IQ for a big man. He reads the game well, and he's a very solid passer of the ball. So when the ball comes into him, he can hold the ball up. He has a good scope of what's going on around him, and he can kick the ball out. Now, The reason why that hasn't been particularly successful or not successful enough is because he passes the ball out and whoever catches the ball, instead of being ready to catch and shoot, it's more a case of catch, maybe take a side dribble or hold on to the ball for a second and then pass it to somebody else. And then by the time it gets into Zach or Demar's hands, the time has run down so far that it's a panic shot. If Vooch could rely on the person that he kicks that ball back out to, like Javon Carter, Torrey Craig, even Kobe, if he can kind of get into being more consistent as opposed to being streaky, because we know he can shoot from distance, and Zach, then that suddenly becomes a much more threatening offense. Because if he kicks that ball out and the player catching it is not afraid to put the shot up and shoots at a reasonable clip, straight away you become a more stretched offense and the defense has to work harder to cover the plays. That in itself is going to open up lanes for the likes of Zach and Demar to move in, or for the ball to pop back into Vooch and for him to hit his bunnies. I just think it always looks better and looked better in the past when the ball goes into Vooch. Now, I'm not talking about having to post up play every time. I'm not talking about old school 90s and 80s basketball. The game has evolved. I know the game's about the 3-point shot, but what I'm saying there is you're creating a 3-point shot through Vooch. Or it doesn't have to be a three. He can pocket pass. Like I say, he's a very capable passer of the ball. And I just think that Vooch is the key to making it all work. And I've said that for a long time. And I know, you tried to force me onto the Kobe train and you were right. And I've kind of, even though Vooch is incredibly frustrating for both of us, I've always kind of sided with Vooch. And I do think that he is incredibly important to how this team works.
Yeah. And something else that actually come out yesterday on Vooch, while we're on Vooch, was, I think it was from Fadeaway Sports or some random site like that. They'd rated the top 25 centers in the NBA.
I don't even know where to begin with this. Anyway, go on.
As I say, I know you've read it. Obviously, I shared it on Twitter and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And how I posed it was, where would you rate Vooch on this list? Bearing in mind, there's people like Zach Collins, Duran or whatever his name is from Pistons, Dwight Powell, some big name centers out there. They were on the list. They were low on the list, granted. So when you look at it, you think, oh, where's Vooch on the list then? Top 10, maybe even pushing the top 5.
Yeah.
Depending how much of a Bulls fan or a Vooch fan this guy is that's writing it. No, not even that high. Not even top 15. Not even the top 20. Not even the top 25. Just, yeah, absolute bullshit.
Right. Yeah. As I said on Twitter today in response to it, it's just downright disrespectful. I hope that whoever wrote it just forgot to look at the Bulls altogether, because Drummond's not on the list either. So maybe when he was going through his list of NBA teams, thinking about all the big players that are there, the big, the number 5s, centers, maybe he accidentally skipped over Chicago Bulls altogether, and that's why Vooch and Drummond don't get a mention. And I'm going to take that little morsel and I'm going to use that as my only excuse for why they've been omitted from the list, particularly Vooch. But yeah, it's if it was a conscious decision to not include them on the list, well, then to quote Demar, that guy don't know basketball.
Yeah. And before we give our predictions, obviously, title of this episode is All Aboard the Vooch Train. And obviously, we had an interaction with Maria on Twitter last week, I think it was. Now I know Maria's a big Vooch fan, and she gets at me quite a lot for my hatred. Not hatred's too much of a strong word. My displeasure with Vooch over the past few couple of seasons, maybe. And I did say to her that I am quite happy to get off the Kobe train and board the Vooch train and drive the Vooch train for this year. You know, for me, Kobe's got to that level where I don't need to be driving that train anymore. Everybody's on board that one. So for me, I'm on board and I'm driving the Vooch train this year. So there'll be no Vooch hate.
Depends.
Yeah. We'll see. But no, I'm going to try. You know, I'm going to try to form my own opinions rather than following the narratives. And for that very reason, my predicted grade for Vooch, I'm going to go A minus.
Okay.
You know, taking into account everything I've just said, I think he's the most important player on the team. The reliability factor, the fact that his game is going to age well because he's not the most mobile of players. He's not. He can be, as we saw a couple of times when he killed that Timberwolves player last year. You know,
which is in our intro.
And something else that I liked from him last year was we started to see a bit of emotion from him. He seems like a player that's, I think it's that typical Eastern European sort of vibe of I'm serious, I'm here to kill people sort of thing. And you know, we saw him flipping the bird, we saw him punching chairs, arguing with Pat Bev. You know, there's that whole the gif that goes around where he's got the ball and that's the one. You know, so I like that, and I think it's a very can't think what I'm trying to say, like underrated side to Vooch in a way. I think he's got more personality than he gives over. There's more personality to him in the locker room that we don't see, and I think hopefully we maybe see it a bit more, or we don't see it a bit more, but they see it a bit more in the locker room this season, and he becomes a quiet leader. And I think, like I say, that's why I'm going to go with the A minus for him.
Okay, very good. I like it. I'm going to bring it down a notch, but only a notch. I have him at a B plus, and I'll tell you for why.
Moving to the normal seats on the train then.
Well, you know, premium economy, not quite economy, not quite business. Yeah. So the reason for it is I do think that this is going to be Zach's year, as we discussed on a previous pod. And for that reason, I think he will have to defer slightly to Zach. And that's why I'm just bringing it slightly down. But I think he could quite easily climb up even as high as an A if he has a particularly strong season. But I do think that he'll just defer that little bit to Zach in order for Zach to take prime position within this team. And that's the only reason why I'm marking him down to a B plus. Plus also, the only other thing would be that Billy has another season of underutilizing him and not using him correctly, which unfortunately is always potentially going to be the case. But I'm kind of hoping that his stint in the World Cup will have opened up the right eyes and maybe made Billy kind of think, actually, that I can see what potential we can get out of Vooch now if we use him just a little bit differently than we have been.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that, to be fair. But if Maria is listening, there you go. I'm on the Vooch train. He's moving his way back.
No, I'll still come up and help you stoke the fire and throw a few coals into the fire when you need me to. Don't worry.
So yeah, that leaves us with a few players. I think 3 players to do next week now.
Right.
To round out our player predictions, and then we'll probably give our team predictions and all that at some point next week if we get around to it. So yeah, I've got nothing else. I don't know if you have.
No, I don't think so.
So you're very eager to get off to work.
Well, I'm already at work. As you can see, I'm dropping my iPad here now. I'm already at work. I'm just trying to keep an eye on 2 flights I've got coming in. So if you see me looking down a lot, I'm not being rude. I'm just watching the radar.
Yeah, well, I'm ready for bed. I'm starting at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, and it's now nearly 11. So I best get some sleep.
I'm planning on hopefully heading home around about the time you'll be starting.
Yeah, so that's a little insight into our lives.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, we're not just professional podcasters. We do have other jobs.
Yeah, real jobs.
But yeah, as always, everybody, thanks for listening or watching, whatever you tend to do. And as always, or as usual, I've been Matt, and you can find me on Twitter at MattCRedUK, and you can find us on all the socials at CRedUK.
And you can find me on Twitter at NeillCRedUK. On behalf of us both and the Fans First Sports Network, thanks once again to everyone for tuning in. Whether you're watching or listening, please subscribe, rate and review, and give us that thumbs up on YouTube. From Matt and myself, remember, it's a Chicago Bulls thing wherever you are in the world. So until next time, see red, people.
Percolator. It's time for the percolator. Percolator.